Hello, it is episode 4 of Sovereign Citizen from the judge's point of view. And this was the one that I promised. This is the one where I'm going to take apart the fallacies in each of the threats that they hurl both towards the officer at arrest time and in court at the judge. So these are really the end of the argument. By that I mean I have 3 years of legal education and a JD in law and have passed the bar and had 30 years of practice. So I know what I'm talking about. My point of view is not one that comes from having read something on Google. That's very important. And so let's get talking about the stop. And I'm sorry about that noise in the background, but it's pretty hot today, so we've got the air conditioner going. It's doing a great job, too. So we'll take the aspect of what we see on YouTube with the stops of the citizens who think that they do not have to stop, although that doesn't seem really to be much of an issue. The issue is what is their conduct after they are stopped by the appropriate law enforcement agency. So let's go to my topic 1 here on my non-existent list, and that is their obligation to roll down the window. That is not clear. I've looked at it from a few different states, and I really don't see where there is a obligation to do so, but it's just goddamn rude. So I don't know why you wouldn't. Now the other thing is, and this is why you want to talk to a lawyer about something like this. If you are pulled over and you do something suspiciously odd, like try to have a conversation with the officer while the window you refuse to lower, there's a real good argument that a district attorney or the city attorney could make is that you have raised a suspicion, a reasonable suspicion in the eyes of the arresting officer. I realize he or she is not arresting me yet, but you have given them a reasonable suspicion that there's something in your car that they would be aware of had you rolled down the window. Most obvious and most common among people pulled over on the side of the road is that there would be the smell of marijuana in the car. I don't see that this has gone up on appeal, but I certainly could see a city attorney making a very cogent argument that the officer had probable cause to inspect a vehicle because the driver bizarrely refused to roll down the window without any explanation. How's that for backfiring? So let's go to number 2. So the first, we're going to leave right where it is. The rolling down the window is not rolling down the window is foolish, ineffective, and really it very possibly hands the victory to the officers who are going to be victorious one way or the other. Remember, sovereign citizens have never prevailed in court on the merits of their arguments. Never. Out of hundreds of cases, they have never won once. Now, there's a few cases where they won because the officer didn't show up or things like that, but that's not prevailing on the merits of the case. Number 2. Number 2 is a question, and it's just a common sense question. Why in the world would you ever believe anything written by some goofball on YouTube or on Google? Do you notice that every article or every batch of papers or information you can buy on sovereign citizenship, encouraging you to be a sovereign citizen, but of course telling you don't use that word because that word could get you in trouble. 2 words. Sorry about that. Every one of those that I've ever seen is not written by a legal official. They're not written by an attorney. So, why would you ever take information from a non-attorney, about how to play a game that's invariably prevailed upon by attorneys, or prevailed in? It's a very foolish game. And what that tends to, this is not a fact, this is my suspicion, I would bet money on it, and that is that the people who really fund and put out the sovereign citizen theories are intentionally targeting that very small percentage of our population that are psychopaths. And that package of information and beliefs appeals perfectly to psychopaths and matches their strange idea that somehow they are not bound by the same rules that apply to the rest of society, that they are above it. Now, I'll just tell you that anyone who ever comes to you with a religion or a philosophy or a method of conducting your legal affairs that when you look at it, it says, guess what? We have just figured out who is the best person in the world, and it's you. And you are the one who deserves to have $600 million in the bank. Anyone who comes up to you with one of those is a con artist. And they're trying to sell you something that's not true, and just stay away from it. I mean, what are the odds that you are the one who fate picked to be deserving to have all of the spoils of the world? Wouldn't it make more sense if he did it and it came up with he's the one who deserves everything, not you? How come these theories that people come up with like this never say, well, we've looked into it, and the person who deserves to have the right to not follow any police orders and has $600 million waiting for him in the bank is Joe Blow over on Minnehaha Street? It never works. It's always, no, it's you. Yeah. You've got this coming. 3, there's not enough money in the world that everybody could have $600 million in a secret account in the bank. And if you believe that, you are mentally ill. And the reason for that would be that anybody who's not mentally ill would know that if there were such a bank, and there is not, the people who work in it would sooner or later have spilled the beans and said, well, we are the ones, I work in the bank where everybody has $600 million, and you think the person who decides how much you get in your account wouldn't have come forward and said, well, guess what, I'm that person. How would they have gotten their job? Who would have appointed them? Where would the money have come from? These are all questions that prove that, unfortunately, sorry to break the news to you, but that theory that you have that you are above the law is just nonsense, and there is no money waiting for you in the bank, except your own, if any. Now, again, common sense should just bring this to you, and you should say, oh, this sovereign citizenship is crazy. Why is it that nobody who puts it forth as an actual belief and says, no, I believe it, I really do think X, Y, Z, why do they all have no money? Not one of them has any success in life. You see nobody who is a successful person in life practicing sovereign citizenship. You just don't see it. It doesn't happen. So that's really one of your best indications that you don't want to join that club. Nobody in that club ends up winning anything. Now, if you notice, if you put my last 2 points together, anything that's human would just walk away. And my last 2 points were, 1, they're 0 for 1,000 or 0 for 2,000 in court. They've never won on the merits, ever. And the second point would be that if everybody who belongs to this group is poor and living in their car, okay, that would explain why they are desperate and would get involved in something this obviously flaky, that they're just hoping that somehow it will work out for them, but it won't work out for them. It's just one more way that people steal from you. So, if you don't want to be stolen from, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. So, let's get back to when you're pulled over. So, you pull the trick about not rolling down the window, and now you have given the officer, in my opinion, like I said, this is not that I know of, it hasn't gone up on appeal, it's not a proven law yet, but I sure think if I were the judge, and I just might be, up there deciding one of these cases, I would say, yeah, I think that gave the officer reasonable suspicion to search the vehicle, unless you have a reason why you didn't do it, and saying, well, I believe in sovereign citizenship, and they said, that's not a reason. They've already been deemed a terrorist organization, which is why, even though you are clearly a member and following all their rules, one of their rules is you have to deny that you're a sovereign citizen. So you fool nobody, okay? So let's get down. We're now past the window. So let's say you have rolled it down very wisely, and you and the officer are talking. Do you have the right to refuse to give him your license? Absolutely not. When the officer asks for your driver's license, you must give it to him, and you must do it without delay. And what that means is the whole section of law, or procedure, I guess, that your sovereign citizenship tries to convince you that you can do a song and dance and delay the officer till he gives up or she gives up and goes away, is not true. You have broken the law the first time you respond with a question. So think about how bad the advice is that you are getting. You have broken the law the first time when the officer says, please give me your driver's license. And especially if you do have a driver's license, it's even clearer that you're breaking the law. The first time you don't hand it back and you go into the speech, what did I do, officer? Even though you know what they did. Can I tell you something? Any philosophy that tells you to lie and be dishonest and pretend you don't know what you did when you do know, leave them alone. Go away. Try your very best to live a life of honesty. Okay? You really and truly, you'll sleep better at night. You'll be a better person. And when you start building a reputation of this is somebody who you can count on to treat you right, as opposed to somebody who's looking through a strange religion or philosophy in order to not do their societal dues, in order to not carry their weight in the society, your life will improve. People will now want to give you a job instead of wanting you not coming anywhere near their property. So let's go back to what I'm saying, which is that when the officer asks you for your driver's license, you have to remember that in small print, somewhere in the laws of your state, there's a very strange paragraph, but it's been held up in court. It's upheld in court, not held up. Quite a difference. It's upheld in court, and that is that your driver's license is not yours. Your driver's license belongs to the motor vehicle department or the DMV or whatever your state calls it. It's their property. So now, look at this scene again. You have the agent of the state asking you to see the property of the state that you have agreed in writing to have with you and to surrender to the officer immediately upon request. So you've already agreed in writing when you got your driver's license that you would turn it over. So every damn step you take to delay that officer is one more crime. If that officer wanted to be tough on you, they could take each statement, well, what did I do? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. That's legal. Each time you do that, that's another delay of the officer in her attempt to determine who you are. And that's extremely dangerous because the officer has a right to know who you are for their safety. They have a right to know, are you a wanted criminal out on the loose? And that's who they're dealing with, so that you're now keeping them from finding out that they are in a deathly, dangerous situation? Boy, that takes a lot of nerve. That really takes a lot of nerve. And I don't think there's anybody on the right-hand side, I'm like on the left-hand side, is there anybody on the right-hand side who can say why or what benefit there is to you or society to have you sitting there spitting out strange theories that are only meant to delay the officer, that have no validity? And we're talking about we'll go through the whole list if you want. I don't want, but the whole, I don't think I was doing anything wrong. Oh, no, that license is legal. It was printed by a friend of mine on his printer, and we got it off of Google that said this is, and I'm not a driver. A driver, Black's Law Dictionary said, okay, so let's get into number 3, I think this is. Now, this is just crucial. Black's Law Dictionary, which, by the way, is not a statement of the law. It is just an opinion of the law. So citing Black's Law Dictionary as the law shows that you know nothing about what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about. So let's get back to it. So what is it that Black's Law is? It's just persuasive. It is an educated person or people's opinion of what the law is. But no, it is not binding on anybody. You can't force any judge, although we see you guys doing it on TV or on the YouTube all the time, saying, oh, no, I have a right to do this. Black's Law said, no, Black's Law is nothing. It's just a little book that helps you interpret words that people like you would not know the meaning of. Although, wait a minute, I have to admit that when I look through it, I see lots of words I don't understand the meaning of either. But the point is, you better sit down, son. Black's Law says that driving is where you employ a vehicle, not where you're employed. That's where somebody who doesn't know how to read got mixed up. Yes, the word employ is right there in the beginning of the definition, but it's not employ like are you employed. You're looking at the wrong usage of the word employ. It says if you employ a device to move you, that is driving. They could have used the word use. So the person who's interpreting that has totally incorrectly interpreted it. It is not a defense to anything. So your entire theory about, well, I'm not involved in commerce, so I'm not a driver, it's completely wrong. It's 100% completely wrong. And anybody who takes, we'll take 10 minutes because you have 2 different fallacies. Anybody who looks up in Black's Law will see, 1, Black's Law is not binding on any court. No court has to follow Black's Law. It's just an opinion. And that makes it persuasive law, which is much less important. The judge has the total right to ignore it. So that's one. And the other thing is, and Black's Law does not say anything about driving is only when you're employed or... It's so funny. It says that if you use any type of device to move you on the highway, that makes it a vehicle. And so that would mean, at least for purposes of having a driver's license, if you're going to use a scooter on the highway, if you're going to use a skateboard on the highway, I don't think it's legal in those places, but if you do, you would have to have a driver's license because you are using or employing a vehicle. It has nothing to do, 0, with employment, and it does not say you have to be involved in commercial purposes in order to somehow submit to a officer and getting a ticket. It's just complete nuttiness. And it's not true. And God, I wish there was a way I could get people to bet me on that. I sure would make a lot of money with these lunatics on YouTube saying, well, I'm not employed. I'm not working. Okay, so let's go down. We're now just past 3. We're going to go to 4. What is another fallacy with the officer when he comes up to the window? Well, we're going to go to the wonderful, ever-present, omniscient, or is that all-knowing? No, omnipresent license plate. No one has the right to make their own license plate. And anyone who makes a speech or tries to devise an argument about, well, you see, I do because here, look, on this paper, I gave myself the right to do it, or my friend Fred, who sold me this packet of papers, he gave me the right. I mean, to do such a thing is insane, but the more important thing is the rules about who makes driver's license and who has the right to issue driver's licenses is already clearly set out in the law books. The fact that you don't know it and haven't read it does not mean that you are entitled to make up your own. It just does not. And all of the, this is from the Treaty of 1741, they're nonsense. If they were the Treaty of 1741, they certainly would not say anything about cars, because cars weren't invented at that time. This is from the Friendship Treaty at 1769. How crazy a topic does it have to be for you to know that somebody is swindling you? But it gets us even more to the real crux of the issue, which is 5, and that is, where are disputes resolved? Not at the roadside. If you are not happy with the state's laws, by law, you have to resolve them in the court. And the reasons for that are so obvious that it makes anybody who believes in sovereign citizens a dunce. In court, the state has their lawyers there to represent them in this dispute. And more important, there's a neutral judge there. When you sit there at the stop, if you're one of the sovereign citizens and say, you have to prove you have... How is anybody going to prove anything at the roadside? Prove it to who? That's why everything you say is completely meaningless, because you do not attach an adverb to that verb or a noun. In other words, you don't say who is it that is supposed to do these things. And you stretch out things like, well, this is code 69101.7 A3, small section B, and never say of what code. Is that the UCC that you cite all the time that has nothing to do with driving? It just shows another person who doesn't understand the law. As soon as you say UCC, everybody who really knows the law just closes their mind up and says, oh, another idiot. The UCC has nothing to do with driving. And I even saw a guy yesterday who was saying, oh no, this has to do with the taxation. And I've been to the taxation board and I've showed them that I have the right to drive my car, and they agreed with it. And, you say, dude, the taxation board is like 6 people. They meet once a month. They did not have you into their office and sit and meet with you. That's just a lie. But more importantly, if they had done that, don't you think the guy would have had a piece of paper pasted in the window saying, here's the order from the saying that I can drive without a license? There is no such thing. Nobody has such an award. But when you sit there and tell the police, sovereign citizens, when you tell the police, oh no, I have the right to do this, I've been to court and the judge granted me that and they dismissed my case. No, they didn't. You're lying. And unless they dismiss it for another reason, like the officer didn't show up, or a witness, turned code or something like that. But when you use those kind of bizarre explanations that, oh no, there's law, this law, I spoke to so-and-so, why don't you have that paper in the window? Well, and even if you did, the officers would have the absolute right to ignore it and say, oh, that's great. That will be your side when you go to the correct forum, the correct site to dispute your interpretation of the law and the states. You dispute those in court. And I'm getting back. I know I already talked about that's one reason for that is so that they can have their lawyer present. Another reason for that, I know I mentioned this, was that therefore there can be a neutral judge who can listen to both sides and decide the truth. But even just as important, that's so that you don't have people like you spouting off nonsense, unprovable nonsense at the roadside, and if that dispute is heard in a court with the rules that you have to provide your legal arguments to the state in advance of the hearing. That would absolutely be true. So if you want to prove that you have the right to drive without a driver's license, you have a right in the state to take that matter to court. You'll lose. But hey, you have a right to take it to court and have it heard. And especially if you have a new argument that they haven't heard before, you have that right. So anyway, that point is, that's why yelling and trying to say that you have certain rights at the side of the road are instantly meaningless. They are nothing but harassment. They are nothing but an attempt to take apart, delay our system of justice. And each and every act you do in conformity with that goal, I believe, should give you a jail stay. Every last step you take at the scene of the stop that defies the officer's orders, providing they are, lawful orders, is a crime, and I think they should be indexed in the complaint so that we can see how many different attempts you made to distract, delay, defer the officer so that they couldn't get around to arresting you, which is what they needed to do. That's the reason why we have these rules, and now we're shifting a little bit, the rules of civil procedure. What? I thought we were in... That's why you need a lawyer to understand these things. That's why you, sovereign citizen, do not understand it. But the rules of civil procedure lay down how papers are filed with the court, which court they're filed in, because that's important. You're trying to have every officer everywhere decide your dispute with the applicable laws. No, you don't have that right. You have to research civil procedure in your jurisdiction and find out where are these cases heard, when are they heard, how are they titled, in other words, what kind of headings do you put on your papers to do that? And you keep going from there and say, hey, I have to follow these rules in order to give the state a fair chance to review my arguments, make you put them together in a reasonable, understandable form. Give the state the time to research your claims of laws, because think how beneficial it would be to the judge when the state says, Judge, this is a sovereign citizen comes in here claiming that their right derives from Black's law. Well, I want to just remind the judge, she knows, that Black's law is not binding law. It's just an opinion written by some people on what legal words mean, and it is not binding on any court. It's just persuasive authority. These people know a lot about law, but no, it's not anything that you can't insist that the judge followed, which is why these people look so foolish being sovereign citizens saying, Black's law says that I can drive without a license as long as I'm not employed. No, it doesn't. Black's law says if you employ a vehicle of any sort to move you on the highway, you are driving. Driving. So you want to make sure that the either city attorney or district attorney, the attorney who's opposing the sovereign citizen's motion, which I don't think they ever file. I don't remember seeing one, but they have to be able to research all your assertions or all your representations that this is the law. They then counter it, and somebody has to write their papers to file with the court saying, "Dear court, here's why you should just simply ignore everything written down by the sovereign citizens." And we'll get to the sub part right in a second. And they therefore give the court the chance, and so this is the third benefit. The court then has the chance to sit and read both arguments and decide which one makes better sense, which one is better legally founded, which one is based on a correct interpretation of the law. Well, once the judge does that and looks through how many of the sovereign citizens' arguments are just based on misunderstandings of the law, intentional misquotations of the law, the judge then has two things to do. One, render a verdict, and so far sovereign citizens are batting 0 out of 1,000. And those arguments have never won anything. But I believe, and with this we're running out of time. Oh, dang it. So episode 4 is going to wind down. This is Judge Knott telling you, I'm sorry we're running out of time, but I believe every judge who gets an argument that falsely states what the case says or that intentionally misquotes what the case says, I've seen that, and even more than that, if it makes up, or we don't have to know if it makes up, if it puts forth a completely phony, that case never said anything like that, and I've seen lots of those in sovereign citizen pleadings, that person gets held in contempt. Every court has a law that if an attorney gives the court BS pleadings, lies in their pleadings, the attorney is automatically in contempt. It's the attorney's job before he turns the papers into the court to make sure that every case that he mentions there is still a valid case, that the quotation he has there from that case is perfect, because even if he got the quotation from papers from Google or some other source like that, the attorney, and when I say attorney, remember that's because these people have asked to be their own attorney in their wisdom, with a W-H-I-Z, wisdom. So they've asked to be their own attorney, and so they have said that they want to file their own pleadings. Well, if you don't know how to check them and make sure that they're accurate, and instead you provide the court with quotations or citings of law that are not valid, or that you've misinterpreted them, anything where you have intentionally either failed to provide the correct meaning of the case, or you've intentionally provided the court false meanings of the case, you belong in jail. That's where an attorney goes, and you were warned that you're not going to get any treatment different than an attorney. That's where you go. And with that, we'll have to call it. I'm sorry, we're out of time. Episode 4 is down. We'll pick up episode 5 next week, and we'll listen to more about when you're stopped, what it is you should really do, and why your instructions from sovereign citizens is absolute nonsense and will get you arrested. And then we'll get into, and here's why you can't prevail in court ever, 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 never, ever.